Little Timmy is ambitious with big dreams. I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, I'm gonna go to so many parties, I'm gonna become a professional musician. But how many of these things does he actually achieve? The answer is 0. Little Timmy is too afraid to start a YouTube channel because he's scared that his first video will suck. He's too scared to ask people to go to a social event because he's scared they might say no, and he never becomes a musician because he's too scared to get on stage and perform in front of people. Meanwhile, Chad doesn't have any of these problems. Chad's first YouTube video sucks, and he uploads it anyway. Chad asks if he can go to that party, and when they happen to say no this time, he understands that that doesn't affect his worth. He understands that this is part of his learning process. Chad doesn't have a single advantage that Timmy doesn't also share. The only difference between these two stories is confidence. Alright, I'm not going to make this intro any longer than it has to be. Hello, my name is Xander, and I'm a competitive public speaker.
The answer was crack, cocaine, no, I'm just kidding.
And as hobbies, I also have a massive TikTok audience and take part in both MMA and pole dancing. Or in other words, I have the confidence to give my opinion, get half naked, and get punched in the face in front of rooms of hundreds of people for fun. And in this video, I'm just going to give you 100% of the tools I've used to get this confidence. So to start off, we need to have an exact definition of confidence so we know what we're talking about. In my opinion, the best definition is not being inhibited by a fear of failure. I am still scared every single time I go on stage. That fear is something that will never go away. I've simply learned the tools required to still perform well in competitions despite that fear. And so if confidence is not being inhibited by a fear of failure, there are by definition only 2 ways that you can accomplish this. The first way is to make it so failure is so unlikely that you're no longer scared of it. And the second way is to up your tolerance for failure, so that even if it does happen, it simply doesn't bother you. And having both of these kinds of confidence and knowing when to switch between them is key if you want the kind of fluid confidence that can apply to any situation. For this video, I'm going to be referring to these two as the skills method and the tolerance method. Starting off with the skills method, I want to ask you a question. Has there ever been a time where you've been stood on one half of the room and wanted to be on the other half, but you didn't walk there because you were too scared? The answer is of course not, because that would be an absurd thing to do. Or in other words, walking from one side of the room to the other is something that you're confident at. And so by understanding why you're confident at that, you can apply this skill to other things. Simply put, the reason that you are confident at walking is because you're good at it. The likelihood of you falling over and face planting with any given step is like less than 0.5%. Therefore, every time you take a step, there's no logical reason to be afraid, and so it's impossible for you to be inhibited by a fear of failure. But if I were to, for example, superglue roller skates to your feet, suddenly you would start to suck at walking. And as your competence decreases, your confidence would decrease with it. And so as mind-numbingly simple as this is, the number one way to become confident at something is simply to become so good at it that you're never gonna fail. And for a lot of pursuits, this is exactly what you should do. I'm confident going into a public speech because I know that I've prepared it. I know that I've done the work to ensure that I'll give a good performance, which means that failure isn't very likely and I don't have to be afraid of it. And while this mindset is great when it works, there are quite a lot of situations where it simply can't work. Like if you're asking someone out, even if you're the most attractive person on the planet, you can't make it 100 or even 99% certain that they'll say yes. When applying for a job, if there's 100 people also applying, there is no way to guarantee that you're the one who's going to get it. And the other big problem with the skills method is that it only works after you've gained the skill. What do you do before you've gotten the skill when you're still new at learning something? Do you just never have confidence? And so the skills method, when you're able to apply it, really works. But there are some situations where it's not possible to apply it, and that's why you need the second kind, the tolerance method. If confidence is not being inhibited by a fear of failure, then the tolerance method is simply saying, if I fail, then it's okay. An example of how you might apply this is if you're thinking of asking someone out and you're worried they might say no, simply say to yourself, if they say no, that's okay. And so by having both of these methods, you can learn to selectively apply them. I'm starting something new, and so it's likely that I'm gonna fail, but I'm gonna be okay with that failure. Then, as I get better and better, I can start to shore up my options and practice to make it certain that I'm going to succeed. Now I have the second kind. But if some new challenge comes along, say something that you couldn't possibly have seen coming, now your competence has been taken away as the situation has changed. And so now you switch to the second method, saying, well, now that failure has become likely, I simply won't mind if I fail. And so now that you know how the method works, how do you actually build these kind of confidence? How do you practically apply this? Well, the answer for both of these is exactly the same. The answer is to fail. over and over again. This was me when I first started kickboxing. This is me now. This was me when I first started lifting. This is me now. This was me when I first started TikTok. This is me now. The only way to become competent at something is to go just outside of your comfort zone and stay there. But by definition, just outside of your comfort zone is where you're likely to fail. When you're in the gym, this advice is literal, as you're supposed to lift until failure. And as for the second method, how do you build up a tolerance for failure? Well, you have to fail. You have to experience what it's like to be in failure and to know that you're still okay afterwards. If I had not gone to training this day and sat at home worrying, what if when I throw a kick I'll fall on my ass? That fear could have been crippling. But because I did that failure, I fell on my ass and I learned that it's okay to do that. And in that moment, I also learned why I fell on my ass, and so I gained the skill to not do it in future, giving me the skills kind of confidence. And so if you want one takeaway from this video, the number one piece of advice is simply to do things that you will fail at. Make that YouTube channel, write that blog post, ask that person out, do that thing, apply to that job. Because once you've gained the confidence to understand that failure is a synonym for learning, nothing can stop you. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos about philosophy and self-improvement. Let me know what I could make better about this video, and thank you for watching.